Chapter 66 Vampires. Carousor, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. So, you want me to tell you all about vampires? Vampire yourself. I ask you, how does this come within the scope of your inquiries? Is this information essential to your accomplishment of the great work? As the government might say, is your journey really necessary? So musing, I rang you up for details. Vampires, you say, might be a temptation to yourself, or they might sap your energy. Very good. I will tell you the little I know. Listen to Eliphas Levi. He warns us against a type of person, fearless and cold blooded, who seems to have the power to cast a sudden chill merely by entering the room upon the happiest party ever assembled. Tete a tete, they shake one's resolution, kill one's enthusiasm, devitalize one's faith and courage. Yes, we all know such people. Mercury, by the way, is the planet responsible. I have examined a considerable number of nativities, both of murderers and of people murdered. In both cases, it was not a malefic that did the dirty work, but poor, tiny, innocent, silvery shining Mercury. You, however, are thinking more of the vampire of romance, Bram Stoker's Dracula and its kindred. That is a splendidly well documented book, by the way. He got his facts and their legal and magical surroundings perfectly correct. It is easy enough to laugh at vampires if you live in Upper Tooting or Surbiton or one of those places where no self respecting vampire would wish to be seen. But in a lonely mountain village in Bulgaria, you might feel differently about it. You should remember, incidentally, that the evidence for vampires is as strong as for pretty well anything else in the world. There are innumerable records extant of legal proceedings wherein the most sober, responsible, worthy, and well respected citizens, including the advocates and judges, investigated case after case with the utmost minuteness, with the most distinguished surgeons and anatomists to swear to the clinical details. Endless is the list of well attested cases of bodies dug up after months of burial, which have been found not merely flourishing with all the lines of life, but gorged with fresh blood. I cannot help feeling that all the superior person explanations, which explain nothing, about collective hysteria and superstition and wish fulfillment and the rest of the current tomfool jargon are just about as hard to believe as the original straightforward stories. It is egomaniac vanity that prompts disbelief in phenomena merely because they lie outside the infinitesimally minute pile of one's own personal experience. When I crossed the Burma China frontier for the first time, who should I meet but our consul at Tingwa, the admirable Lytton, who had by sheer brains and personality turned the whole province of Yunnan into his own viceroyalty? We lunched together on the grass, and I hastened to dig into the gold mine of his knowledge of the country. About the third or fourth thing he said to me was this: remember, whatever anyone tells you about China is true. No words have ever impressed me more deeply. They sank right in and were illuminated by daily experience until they had justified themselves 1,000 times over. That goes for vampires. In 1916, I was the first trained scientific observer to record the appearance commonly called St. Elmo's fire, indiscreetly revealing this fact in a letter to the New York Times. I was pestered for the next 6 months and more by professors of physics and the rest from all over the USA. The existence of the phenomenon had been doubted until then because of certain theoretical difficulties. That, sister, is the point. If a statement is hard to reconcile with the whole body of evidence on the laws of the subject, it is rightly received with suspicion. A moment with great Huxley and his illustration of the centaur in Piccadilly, reported to him, he humorously hypothesizes, by Professor Owen, what occasions Huxley's doubt and inspires the questions by means of which he seeks to confirm or to discredit it. Just this, no more. Here is the head and torso of a man fitted to the shoulders of a horse. How are the mechanical adjustments effected? In the same strain, he pointed out that for an angel to have practical wings, as in medieval pictures, the breastbone would have to stand out some 5 feet in front of the body. The poor fellow, of course, was densely ignorant of the mechanics of the astral plane. I am, for once, on the side of the angels. Am I digressing again? No, not really. I am just putting forward a case for keeping an open mind on the subject of vampires, even of the clan Dracula. How then is the subject in any way important to you? Thus, that there are actually people running about all over the place who actually possess and exercise faculties similar to those mentioned by Levi, but in much greater intensity, even of a kind more formidable and directed by malignant will. There is a mighty volume of theory and practice concerning this and cognate subjects which will be open to you when and if you attain the 8th degree of the O.T.O. and become pontiff and epop of the Illuminati. Further, when you enter the sanctuary of the Gnosis, oh boy, or more accurately, oh girl, the forces of nature employed in these presumably abominable practices are similar or identical. The doctrine of vital force has been so long and so completely exploded that I hardly need to tell you that in some still undiscovered, or rather unpublished, and unmeasured form, it is certainly a fact. Haven't I told you one time how we nearly starved on Istakiwatu with dozens of tinned foods all around us, they being ancient? Of how one can get drunk on half a dozen oysters? Or how the best meat I have ever eaten is half raw Himalayan sheep, cut up and thrown on the glowing ashes before rigor mortis had set in? There is a difference between living and dead protoplasm, whether the chemist and his fellow twilight gropers admit it or no. I do not blame the ignorance of these fumblers with frostbitten fingers, but they make themselves conspicuously asinine when they flaunt that ignorance as the quintessence of knowledge. Boeotian bombus. Is it possible to intensify the devitalizing process so as to weaken the victim physically, perhaps even almost to the point of death? Yes. How? The traditional method is to get possession of some object or substance intimately connected with the victim. On this, you work magically so as to absorb its virtue. It is best if it was as recently as possible part of his living tissue. For instance, a nail paring, a hair plucked from his head, something still alive, or nearly so, and still part of the complex of energies that he included in his conception of his body. Best of all are fluids and secretions, notably blood and one other of supreme importance to the continuity of life. When you can get these still alive to their function, it is best of all. That is why it is not so highly recommended to tear out and devour the heart and liver of your next door neighbor. You have gone far to destroy just that which is of most importance to you to keep alive. Doubtless you will reply with some apparent justice that by taking into your own body, and so preserving the life of his heart and liver, the whole of his vital energies will desert the sinking ship of the physical tissue and rush to the lifeboat provided by the vampire. Never forget that you confer an inestimable benefit upon the victim by absorbing his lower form of energy into your higher. Read Magick, chapter 12. You say this strongly, my dear sister in the Lord. Your thesis is impeccably stated. Your arguments are cogent, plangent, not to be repeated. But this I put to you most solemnly. What experimental evidence do you adduce? How many hearts, how many livers have been your spiritual sustenance? Have you excluded every source of error? Have you? Here, you know the routine. Write it all down and send it along to be vetted. Be that as it may, I once knew a lady of some 70 summers. She came of a noble Polish family. She was short, sturdy, rather plump, but singularly agile, good looking in a brutal sort of way. But her eyes. For 50 years, she had lived nearly all the year round in her chateau in Turin. She had plenty of money and had always surrounded herself with a dozen or more boys and young men. By young, I mean up to 40. She not only looked 25, but she lived 25. It was a genuine, natural, spontaneous 25, not a gallant effort. She would dance the night through and go a long walk in the morning. You may apply to her for details of the treatment. I dare say she is still about, though I did hear that she moved to South America when she saw 1914 coming. In any case, you have had some fairly plain hints, so I can say in all simplicity, go thou and do likewise. I think my old friend Claude Ferrer had more than an inkling of these matters. The idea of using young cellular tissues to fortify the old is plainly stated in La Maison des Hommes Vivants. But as to the method of transmission, his water was drawn from the wells, H.G. Wells. After that, you will agree that I have written enough. Love is the law. Love under will. Fraternally.